Street Fighter II revitalized the arcades in the 90s, but before that, Street Fighter I was quietly released and somewhat unnoticed. Today is the 30th anniversary of Street Fighter I in the arcades. Let's chat about it today on Side Quest. Games like Yi Kung Fu and Karate Champ were already in the arcades, sucking up quarters in the early 80s. Both of these were early fighting games that predated Street Fighter I. Karate Champ from Data East used a no-button, two-controller scheme, much like Robotron, and tried to somewhat follow the official sport of karate scoring rather than a health bar. It also included a player versus player mode. Following Karate Champ was Yi Kung Fu from Konami and was the next fighting game that influenced Street Fighter I. Yi Kung Fu used a standard control stick and two buttons for punch and kick, utilized a health bar, but lacked a side-by-side player versus player mode. Shortly after, Capcom wanted in on this action, so their answer was Street Fighter I, released on August 30th, 1987, 30 years ago today. Seeing that it was released a few years after these other games, it was definitely some steps ahead in graphics and gameplay. The first version of Street Fighter I had interesting controls. It used a normal joystick for movement, however the buttons on the original arcade cabinet were these big silicone-looking pads that were pressurized based on how hard the player hit them. Hit them soft for a light punch or kick, harder for a medium, and slam it for a hard punch or kick. However, as you might expect, this took a toll on the machines and they would break constantly. So they redesigned it, and this is how we ended up with the famed 6-button layout that is still used to this day. The top 3 buttons are light, medium, and heavy punch, and the bottom 3 are light, medium, and heavy kick. Street Fighter I introduced 12 characters such as Mike, who's similar to Balrog, returning characters Birdie and Sagat, and most notably it introduced Ken and Ryu. However, you can only start Ken from a 2-player game and can only play him in the single-player campaign if you defeat Ryu in a player versus player match. Otherwise, there's no character select screen on Street Fighter I, and the single-player automatically starts with Ryu. Ken and Ryu both are equipped with their standard Fireball, Hurricane Kick, and Dragon Punch that they have used in every game since. However, in Street Fighter I, they are much harder to pull off. In Street Fighter I, you fight your way through 10 opponents, ending with Sagat. Each stage is set in a locale specific to your opponent, and they get harder as you progress. Defeat all 9 fighters and Sagat, and you'll be told how you are the best fighter, but to be careful because there are always new challengers waiting. Pretty much the same as all Street Fighter games, but unlike other Street Fighter games, this one sadly had some issues holding it back. The game controls are awful, the animation and movements are not fluid, and pulling off special moves are nearly impossible. I remember Street Fighter I in the arcade I hung out as a kid. It was the 6-button version. I gave it a try a few times, but I never really got into it, and I certainly couldn't pull off any of the moves. Like most, it wasn't until Street Fighter II came out did we see the fighting game genre explode, and not to mention the arcade come alive again with people packing around the machine and going nuts. All of my friends were totally hooked on Street Fighter II, and we spent every weekend just after high school perfecting our skills. And although Street Fighter I never really captivated us, it was a catalyst to Part 2 that created a lifelong love of not only Street Fighter, but fighting games in general. And it's really cool and fun to go back to Street Fighter I and just check it out and see where it all came from. I recommend you do that if you have the chance. It was released as Fighting Street on the TurboGrafx 16, was featured on a couple comps for the PSP, PlayStation 2, and Xbox, and also as a virtual console download for the Wii. Yeah, so what do you think about Street Fighter I? Ever played it? Tell me about your memories of it below in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.